We should definitely start with Ordinals, because that's been the fight of the last year that came out of nowhere.
Yeah.
It kind of these Bitcoin topics now, they kind of tend to operate like almost like the left and right divide. When there's a topic, I'm like, okay, I know what Udi and Eric are gonna think, and I know what the Maxi's gonna think,
Right.
and then they like douche it out.
Right.
And Ordinals appears to be one of those, and I got really mixed feelings about it.
Yeah. I think I try to separate it out between like there's a few parts of it, and I try to kind of separate out how I feel based on the different parts of it, right? So there's like just the core, like we're doing NFTs on Bitcoin. It's like, yeah, that's not really what it's for, but if you really want to do collectibles, go knock yourself out, whatever. Then there's the part of it where it's like, we're putting images on the chains. Like, that sucks, but man, you're paying miners, and we really got to pay the miners. So we have to pay the miners in a sustainable way. And it's not clear to me, the Ordinals thing might have legs. Certainly this like BRC20 crap is clearly like inflated right now. There's clearly some people pushing up that market, and it's kind of Ponzonomics kind of crap. It's not going to stick around. So I'm not like, oh yay, we're paying the miners with this like token issuance crap on Bitcoin. It's like, no, we're not, because it's not going to stick around. It's not sustainable. It doesn't really help in any way. But the like ordinal stuff, maybe a little bit. I don't know. We'll see.
Well, the NFT thing, I expect to follow the same path as NFTs on Ethereum, in that there's like this fad period that people are buying, trading, and then once the market kind of dies out and people realize they've lost a bunch of money, they're done with it.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely cut down a lot, and we'll see where it goes there. I do worry about all this stuff and how it might impact MEV on Bitcoin. I guess we have to separate out the like MEV versus Mevel. It's like MEV is just like, well, we have to pay miners. It's like the miner extractable value, which is the transaction fees. All right, great. And then there's the like Mevel of you can, if you are a miner and you can take the transactions that you're putting in a block and reorder them in some way, or select different transactions, and you can make substantially more money than just looking at the transaction fees, then that's really dangerous, right? So like, I've worked a lot on decentralizing mining.
Yep.
So with Stratum V2 designs, the goal being that a normal average miner can run their own full node, select the transactions they're going to mine, and still mine with a pool, but the pool is just handling the reward splitting and the payouts. And if such a miner, like a normal miner, just running their own full node, selecting the transactions, can't just run Bitcoin Core and get a competitive high value block out of it, then that's really problematic, because now some like, podunk miner who might only have however many machines has to go hire full-time engineers, pay somebody, probably somebody super competent. So they're going to be paying somebody, $150,000, $200,000 a year to design, how do we select the best transactions in the block and get the most value out of our block? They can't afford to do that. And so then they're like, if they want to be a competitive miner, suddenly now they have to mine with a pool again. They have to have a pool doing that work, because the pool can afford to hire these people. And this is what we see in Ethereum, right? Where like Ethereum did this split where you have the people producing the blocks and the like stakers and whatever, but then we have because they understood that this was super expensive to do MEV, they separated it out, and they said, like, we're going to have these like competitive MEV marketplace thing, except it never turned into a competitive marketplace. There's like 2 or 3 companies who select all of the transactions that get into the blocks and can censor and can do whatever. And that's where Mevel is a problem. It's evil MEV. It's really evil and really harms the censorship resistance of the system.
So what's the solution? How do you get away from that?
I mean, there's not a clear solution. Don't build these protocols. Don't use these protocols that allow reordering, right? And just Ordinals doesn't itself have that problem necessarily. Ordinals which encourage people to want to be the millionth minted NFT or something, that's a problem. Don't encourage that. Don't pay for that. Don't want that. Ordinal marketplaces, decentralized marketplaces actually also often have this problem. Like, what if someone fat fingers, right? If I'm selling my NFT or I'm selling some asset or whatever, and I fat finger it, and I, sell my thing that's worth millions for a penny. Well, all right, now it's like a decentralized marketplace. Bob's going to try to buy it, but it doesn't matter what Bob tries to do. The miner is going to be the one who claims it, right? As long as the miner is running this kind of software and has invested a lot of time and resources into designing software to monitor for these cases, then they're going to be the ones who claim it, and they're going to make a bunch of money doing that. And so actually, ironically, for ordinals and stuff like that, you really want to prefer centralized marketplace, not these kind of trustless ones. You can build a trustless one that doesn't have this problem, so where you don't necessarily have to like deposit something and then like trust them to with your money. But the like pure decentralized ones where you're just posting bids and asks as like partially signed Bitcoin transactions, they often have this like Meevil issue, and like we don't really want to encourage that. So it's not something I'm worried about as like, oh, we're really screwed right now. It's something that I worry could be a problem as these kinds of protocols get adopted if we don't do it right. And so it's kind of on the tech world to be aware of these issues, to consider these issues when designing systems. And it's also, when people say like, this is a problem, this has a MEV issue, this introduces MEV on Bitcoin, if you see that as a user, you should be running away. You shouldn't want to use this, even if it claims it's all kinds of great and decentralized marketplace and whatever. That doesn't make it good. That actually, puts Bitcoin's decentralization at risk.
So what is the difference between an NFT and an ordinal? Because I thought they were the same thing.
Yeah, it's semantics almost. It's like ordinal, like every Satoshi is technically an ordinal, and it just has a number assigned to it. And then you can take an image and assign the image to a given Satoshi.
Right.
And that makes it an inscription, which is kind of an NFT. But the ordinals are also NFTs, but they don't have images. They're just like every Satoshi has a serial number. I don't know. People collect things.
I still haven't fully understood the ordinals thing in that it is a separate protocol that sits outside of Bitcoin that basically numbers all the Satoshis.
Yeah.
From start to finish.
That's it.
So you can basically, you might want to buy a certain number, or you might want to buy something attached to it. And it kind of, one of the arguments against it is kind of destroys the fungibility of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, potentially, I don't think people, the ordinals thing never took off, right? The serial number itself, like I want to buy the millionth Satoshi or the billionth Satoshi or whatever, never took off. And for good reason. It's hard to find the specific Satoshi. It's kind of like why it's not whatever. People just didn't seem to want to collect those. I guess I don't understand the collection psyche, so I can't comment as to why, but people didn't want to collect those. People did want to collect images assigned to them. And that's a whole lot better from a like fungibility perspective, or it's a whole lot better from fungibility perspective, and also kind of a Bevel perspective and all these other things. Is like I'm just gonna like attach an image to a Satoshi I already have, versus like I'm gonna like go comb through my wallet and start picking out Satoshis and like using those for something. One is much more separate. One's much more separate. It's like, I'm just gonna build this protocol on top and on the side, and we're gonna like play around with our images and whatever. And one's like very like I'm gonna go scan through all my wallets, and I'm gonna like every transaction I receive, I'm gonna like try to see whether there's something that's worth more or less. That gets into a real fungibility issue, right? Versus the images and the NFTs, well, no one's gonna like accidentally send you an image, or if they do, probably it's worthless and you don't care. So you don't, the concern with fungibility is in part like what happens if fungibility is broken. There's all kinds of downstream issues, but one of the most immediate issues would be that suddenly your wallet software needs to care about the individual Satoshis, right? So if there's like, if chain analysis becomes broadly used so much so that like certain Satoshis become like worth less, that is a huge issue because now you as a wallet software author or you as someone using Bitcoin, well, now you have to go look at the transaction you received and see whether any of your Satoshis are worth less because chain analysis has said no. Same thing applies to the like ordinal numbering thing, right? Where like now there's all this complexity and mental overhead with like, you know, is one of your Satoshis worth more because it has some clever serial number? Less of an issue for the images, right? Where it's like, no one's going to accidentally send you their NFT image thing. So you don't need to like do this kind of scanning.
Okay. So, but an NFT is attached to a specific Satoshi.
Yeah.
So if I didn't know I had one, say somebody sent me, I don't know, a Bitcoin, one of the Satoshis in there had an NFT in it. Could I receive that without knowing it? Of course.
Yeah,
my
you
wallet.
could.
If I then send, you know, half a Bitcoin to Danny and that's got that NFT in there, am I paying a higher miner fee because it exists?
No.
Okay, so
no. So the image is like a one-time thing.
Okay.
It's tagged to the Satoshi and then it just follows the Satoshi through the history, but it after that point, there's no evidence on chain. There's nothing different on the chain about that Satoshi.
Okay, so when you are saying, again, I don't understand this. When you are sending an NFT, why is I mean, like I know it's probably something to do with file size, but why am I paying a miner fee? What's actually happening with that image within the protocol?
They're literally just putting it on the chain.
But when you say they're putting it on the chain, what is it? What's going on the chain?
Yeah, so they take the transaction with, you know, I don't know the exact specifics, but basically like, you know, you take your Satoshi that you want to tag and you put that, you know, you spend that. And as a part of spending it, you also put some additional metadata in the transaction. You also like add a bunch of data where the signature goes, right? So there's space where you can just add additional data to the transaction. It doesn't impact the transaction in any way, just makes it bigger. And thus, of course, you have a higher miner fee. And you just pad that data with the image. You know, you literally just take whatever your image is that you want and you just shove it in the transaction in right next to the signature. And then, you know, you have your normal Bitcoin transaction with a ton of extra data and it becomes a huge transaction and has to pay a big mining fee. But that's kind of it. Other than that, it's a normal transaction.
And so do I have to have a specific wallet to receive that?
Yeah, you have to. So you're, you know, when you're creating that, you have to use specific software to construct this transaction in the correct format. And then from there on out, if you want to maintain that image, that NFT Satoshi, you have to have specific software that, you know, is aware of this protocol so that when it constructs a transaction, it doesn't accidentally send it to somebody else.
So you probably just have a separate wallet, which is just those ones. So you could have 20 Satoshis in there, but it's 20 images.
Right.
And that's wallet can maybe display what these are. And
those the NFT stuff is like completely segmented into a separate wallet. Doesn't, you know, you're not going to accidentally spend that because you're just going to keep it in your like NFT wallet.
Can you ever see a scenario where you would buy one?
No. I've got no real interest in it. The thing that I've never really understood though is like you can't inscribe every single Satoshi because you can't send a single Satoshi, right? Is the minimum amount like 500 and something Satoshis?
Yeah. I mean, you're like inscribing a specific Satoshi within that transaction.
Like
yeah.
Okay. But so you can never get like, does it not happen where people sometimes inscribe 2 Satoshis that would almost fall into like one batch of like a 500 Satoshi transaction? Yeah,
I mean, there's like some protocol for deciding which of the Satoshis within that number is inscribed.
Right.
I don't know exactly. It doesn't matter. Like you pick an arbitrary one basically, but the protocol defines a way to pick exactly this is the one Satoshi that got inscribed of the batch.
Yeah, I just can't see where I'd buy one. I could see where I'd sell them. You could, like with the football team, you could do one for each of the players and you could do that and raise money for the players. And so then I think if I did that, you know, it'd be great. You raise some money for the football team, whatever. But do you piss a bunch of people off as well, don't you?
I mean, they're valid transactions, but I just don't care about them.
I don't care about them, but at the same time, the flip side, if I don't care about them, but I care that other people want them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a way of fundraising, I guess. But.
Yeah.
But I'm like questioning, is it bad for Bitcoin?
I don't think so.
I know they're valid. Well, some people think it is. That's the point.
But you're not breaking the rules and you pay miners. Like,
Of course. But, you know, you're not breaking the rules by putting certain images on chain, but but is ethically right.
It's weird. It's not really the purpose of the system, but it doesn't break the system in any meaningful way. I mean, there are, again, like we talked about, there are ways it could creep into the system and cause problems, but the kind of naive and common usage doesn't really. So, and who cares?
Can you wipe an inscription and replace it with a new one?
I think you can replace it with a new one. I don't think you can remove it. I think once a Satoshi is inscribed, it is inscribed. But you could, for example, replace it with a white image or something.
But it's not inscribed in the Bitcoin protocol, right? It's in the Ordinals protocol.
Right, in whatever this protocol is that interprets the blockchain in some different way.
So strictly speaking, could you have multiple ordinal protocols, each inscribing them separately?
You can, and there are other ones. So there's one that whatever ordinals backwards is, I don't know how to read it, and it just defines a different ordering scheme, right? Because all ordinals is just an ordering scheme of how we assign numbers to Satoshis. Well, we can just define a different one. We can define a backwards one, in fact, and someone has done this and implemented it. But you can go use that.
But couldn't somebody do two forward ones?
Sure.
Yeah, so you could have multiple.
There are infinity possible protocols for how you could number all the Satoshis.
Right, okay. But the only thing that's really happening in Bitcoin is you're just adding data to a transaction.
And just, without inscribing, you're not even adding any data, right? If you're just assigning serial numbers to every Satoshi, there's no data. There's nothing new about it. You're just giving them all a number. Yeah, because
there are certain things in life I wouldn't buy, but I would sell outside of this, right? You run certain businesses.
Yeah.
No.
And I'm not gonna do it. People are gonna be listening, going, he's gonna put up Rail Buffett Ordinals, but it is quite a cool way to raise money for players, isn't it?
I mean, you just piggybacking the Bitcoin community, thinking they might spend more Satoshis than they would pounds, I guess.
Yeah, it goes to that point though. It's I remember I was in a meeting in LA. It was the guy who died about a year ago, the 50-year-old. He was involved in what shitcoin? But he also involved a company that made skins for computer games.
Yeah.
And he was telling me about, there was one game and there was a sword or a gun skin, and it was like 32,000.
Oh yeah, that's a huge marketplace.
Yeah, this guy bought it. And I was like, what? And he said, listen, do you play golf? And I said, occasionally. I said, but my dad does. He said, does your dad love golf? He's like, yeah. I said, so he's got a nice set of clubs? I said, yeah, actually he has. He's like, well, your dad wants to play golf, and he goes to the golf club and he gets the best set of clubs that he wants. It's like tennis players. Some will go, they're not great tennis players, but they're going to spend $1,000, $2,000 on a tennis racket because that's them. He said, this is their tennis racket. It's just in the digital world.
Yeah, people want collectibles.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. I don't buy collectibles, but there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, people have bought baseball cards you're talking about selling pictures of the players. It's no different than baseball cards. People have been buying those things for decades.
Well, I do it with trainers.
Centuries.
I've talked about it on the show. I do it with trainers. I've got 600 pairs of trainers.
Right.
I collect trainers and I love it. And that's my thing. So I'm reticent to be critical of people doing their thing when it's what they like. Like Scarlett had this game, what was it called? Roblox, my daughter. And she would buy a giraffe skin, and she would run around on a little giraffe. And she loved it.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking, if there are people who like that, want to collect that, the guy from Minneapolis.
Oh, yeah.
What was his name?
Edgar.
Edgar.
Yeah, he came across from Bedford.
Edgar. He might be like, I'm going to buy all the fucking players. So, yeah, interesting. Well, I'm not too bothered. I like the miners getting paid.
Yeah, big fan of that.
Yeah.
And it's flushed out a lot of bugs and lightning, so that's great.
Well, yeah, we're coming to that. Is there any use case for ordinals beyond images? Could it be tickets to a concert? Could it be, could you turn up and just flash up your thing and here's a ticket, and, if you can't go, you can send that ordinal to somebody else?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a million attempts at people trying to come up with different uses for NFTs and tokens and whatever, beyond the kind of collectible use case. And we can look to Ethereum and that space for those kinds of things. But almost none of them have really taken off because most of them don't really have a compelling reason, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, well, you issued a ticket. Well, guess what? Ticketmaster is absurd, overcharge, and they charge however much to resell a ticket, and it's obscene. And then, your blockchain fee's $10 and it's all the same at the end anyway. So why did you put it on a blockchain, you're not
that's
adding any
fair.
value. So I think it is a little challenging to come up with something where you really do want that kind of more trustless ownership. And that is part of why the Ordinals inscriptions NFTs took off, is because unlike the like Ethereum NFTs, where it's just basically like, hey, here's a URL to an image, and then, you know, you claim that you own really the URL, not the image. The inscription stuff's actually like, here's the image, it's on the blockchain.
Right.
Which is both wasteful, like it's like, you know, a ton of extra data on the chain, but also really compelling to people who want to collect an NFT and really own it and say like, I really own this image. It's actually on the chain and no one can take that from me.
Yeah, because if it's on the URL and the URL dies or it
Right.
goes...
Which has been a problem for many NFTs. Like FTX went down. When FTX got taken down, a bunch of the Solana NFTs died because they were hosted on a server ran by FTX. And so a bunch of the Solana NFTs disappeared, and all of a sudden we're just 404s, and now you own a 404 page.
Yeah, off the back
Although
of...
weirdly, that might be more valuable now because it's quite
Yeah,
funny.
I mean, it's like an FTX seized by the government 404 page. I
Yeah.
mean, that's compelling.